While I make every effort to broadcast correct information, I'm also still learning. I will double check all my facts, but realize that healthcare is a constantly changing science and art. One doctor or healthcare provider may have a different way of doing things from another. I welcome any comments, suggestions, or correction of errors. I take no money from supplement or device companies. By listening to this podcast or reading this blog, you agree not to use this podcast or blog as medical advice or to treat any medical condition in either yourself or others, including but not limited to patients that you are treating. Consult your healthcare provider for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the podcast or the website. Under no circumstances shall any guests or contributors to the podcast or blog or any employees, associates, or affiliates of the Boss Body podcast be responsible for damages arising from use of the podcast or the blog. This blog or podcast should not be used in any legal capacity whatsoever, including but not limited to establishing the standard of care in a legal sense or as a basis for expert witness testimony. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast or the blog. What's up, guys? It's Dr. Tim Jackson with another episode of the Boss Body Podcast. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest, Ms. Bridgit Danner. She's been a licensed acupuncturist since 2004, as well as a certified functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner since 2015. After losing everything to toxic mold, Bridgit now educates about toxins, on how to detoxify with a functional medicine healthcare approach through her online community at bridgitdanner.com. She's also the author of the Ultimate Toxic Mold Recovery Guide, Take Back Your Home, Health, and Life, available on Amazon. Welcome, Bridgit.
Hi, Dr. Tim. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so I've been following you online for a while. We've shared messages back and forth, but it's finally good to be able to interview you. I know we were talking off camera about how you were one of the first people that I remember, healthcare providers talking about mold online. So can you kind of walk us through what you're comfortable sharing with your mold story?
Sure. So I was already working as a practitioner. I went to school in New Mexico. Then I moved to Oregon to start my acupuncture career. And I guess progressively, I started to have, more symptoms, especially in the wintertime, just like lots of colds and flus. I don't think, for starters, like that damp climate is the best for me constitutionally. And then a few years into that, I got engaged. I moved into a new home, really not at all, no alarm bells going off, but I got sicker. But around the same time, I also opened a clinic, had a baby. So I was basically told, well, you're stressed, your hormones are changing. And yeah, just, more and more symptoms that were kind of dismissed. And I really tried my best to work on them. I really got into like a whole foods paleo diet. I was very, very clean about my cooking and avoiding gluten and eating, fresh food and going to bed on time. I was doing like all the things, right? And seeing, getting support, seeing practitioners, but not really getting better. And I would say more and more I was studying functional medicine, really kind of looking for answers for myself. Went through a functional medicine training program, was feeling pretty good. And then another winter came around and I had just started working exclusively from home because I was starting this online business. And I just got really, really sick. I had strep throat. I didn't recover well. I was exhausted. I did a detox. It didn't work. I did IV therapies. Nothing was helping. So I was at a naturopathic school and for treatment. And I was just like, you got to figure out, I can't do any more than this. Like, what's going on? And one thing they asked me was, anything changed in your home? Which is just such a key question. Now I know that every practitioner should ask. So it got me thinking about the home, and we did have this basement that would get a little bit damp or have a little water intrusion. And So we ended up testing the home and finding out it had mold in several different ways, or, water damage in several different ways. We made a lot of mistakes in how we handled the remediation, got sicker. It was a big journey of uh, losing a lot financially and materially, and it was just a very stressful, hard time. But we did get through it, and that was some years ago now, and my health is, much much different. So it's definitely something you can get through, but if you don't find it as a source, you can really get stuck or get a lot worse, because just like me, like you're trying to, balance your hormones or heal your gut or whatever, but it's like you never really can succeed because your environment is poisoning you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that story. It's very inspiring. I went through mold toxicity myself, and it's very stressful because not only are you fighting for your health, you're fighting to explain it to people who don't really get it. They think that, mold toxicity and being allergic to mold are the same thing when, they're two very different things. And so I know how difficult it can be for people out there who may already know that they have mold. Do you have any suggestions or recommendations on how to go about explaining it to your inner circle?
Yeah, let's see. That's a good question. Um, like why mold is dangerous type of thing. Is that kind of what you're asking?
Yeah,
How to
exactly.
explain it? Well, this is my little spiel I get when I'm on podcasts, which is yes, mold is like a natural thing. There's like thousands of species of mold, but there's two ways it can make you sick, especially in an environment you're in a lot, like your home or your workplace. One is just if the overall load of mold in a place is heavy, it's a burden on your immune system. Plus, it's mixing with other things in the environment, like yeast and bacteria and chemicals. And then two, there's about a dozen molds that emit these mycotoxins that are dangerous to mammals. So all the mammals in your home, uh, and they are basically like a poison given off by the mold, and that penetrates your body. So it can penetrate into your brain, it can colonize in your gut or your nose, and then it just kind of keeps making you sick, this like poisonous burden on your body. So I don't know if I would use that exact explanation if I was explaining it to people. Luckily, I think more and more people have some sense that you can have mold in your home and that it's bad for you. Like now, if I'm in an Uber or whatever, and somehow this comes up, um, people seem to have some awareness that mold in your home is a bad thing, which I think is great progress.
Absolutely. No, I agree totally. I've seen it change over the past 12 years, in terms of becoming part of the functional medicine conversation. Whereas before, environmental health was sort of this esoteric, tertiary consideration. But for people who are listening, who want to test their home or office or whatever for mold, what is the best way to go about that?
Sure. So at this point, body testing is a lot more straightforward than home testing. Home testing, it depends on, do you rent or you own? Like, what's your budget? What do you suspect? It's not as straightforward of an answer. And most mold is behind the scenes. Like most mold is not going to be visible to you. About 90% of it is going to be, in floorboards, behind the wall. You may sense like there's some moisture or there's some staining or something. So unfortunately, the home testing is like less straightforward, but I'll give you the option. So, one of the more affordable ways to test is using a plate. It's not a perfect test, but basically it has a medium where mold can grow, and then you can put it in various rooms or areas of the home. You could put it in your office cubicle, you could put it in your car, you can kind of put them anywhere. And if it grows, you can send it to this lab, immunolytics, and they will actually go over it with you, and what like types it is and stuff like that. So if it's not growing, you don't have to like pay for an analysis. And that can be a good option if, you're renting or the workplace or whatever, and it's pretty affordable. Next kind of do it yourself test is, there's a few different types of dust tests out there. Some will measure the mycotoxins, which are the toxins emitted. Some will measure actual like mold spores. Some will measure both. And you can collect them either in a specific area or all around the house. And there's different ways and instructions just to know what's present there. But that test, if you're testing all around your house, isn't going to tell you where it's coming from, right? So if you're a homeowner, ultimately you're going to need someone more like a mold inspector to come, which is actually where we started. We didn't start with the DIY test. They can test for basically a source, not only like the presence, but potentially the source. So our inspector found lots of things like, there's moisture in your walls, your gutters aren't draining right, there's moisture on the floorboard of your basement. So that gives you a sense of where to go next, because it's not like you just do a home test and then you do some cleaning or whatever. Like, it's a project, it's a home project at this point. And that's often the step that people don't take seriously enough. They want to save money, right? And so they just want to like do it themselves or whatever. But just like functional medicine, we had to find the root cause and treat that. The root cause is in the mold. That's the result of water damage in your home somewhere. So, ultimately you do need to find that out if you're the homeowner.
Absolutely. And so the immunolytics test, is that able to detect like moisture from behind the walls, or what's the best way? I know there's a camera that some inspectors use where you can visualize to some degree condensation behind the walls.
Yeah, and you can actually buy that same kind of stuff at Home Depot or whatever. You can buy a moisture meter. But again, yeah, it might be better to have a professional who has those tools, unless somebody in the family is really like already in this business, right? And really kind of knows it. But yeah, there's different tools to just measure moisture on the walls. Like, they're not expensive. And then that can give you a sense of, okay, like we know where a problem is at and then why, right? So we had some windows that weren't installed correctly, or the gutter thing I mentioned. So even just knowing there's moisture in your wall still doesn't exactly let you know where it came from, but it's getting you closer, right, to the source of it.
And on another thing, an architect that I follow on Facebook, she talks about the slope of the land and how important it is for, water and rain to drain away from, the foundation of your home.
Yeah, the grading. Yeah, and we had some issues with that as well, especially a place like Oregon, where it's often raining and like, things kind of shift more. Now I'm in Arizona, the ground is like hard as a rock. Like
Right.
you're not really having I mean, you could have a problem with that, but yeah, just definitely depending where you live, how much rainfall, like, you have to be aware of that as a homeowner and just protecting your home.
Absolutely. So let's talk about solutions in terms of whether it's fixing your home structurally, the grading of the land, and then ultimately your body.
Yeah. So, again, it's almost like, even though the body is complex, the body almost seems like the easier part in some ways. It first of all, it can take a while. If you've been in a moldy home for a while, a moldy workspace, just know it's going to take a while for the bodies, just the way the cells are turning over and repairing. It's just going to take time. But really, beyond time, you've got to support the body, because the way we recycle bile means that toxins can recycle back in if you're not careful about that. If you have any genetic or like nutrient deficiencies, you're constipated, detox can be hampered. So I've definitely seen, now that I've been in the mold space longer, people who are no longer in mold, they moved out, but they're still testing positive, a couple of years later because they never really detoxed. They just sort of went on with life. I'm sure that reduced the load a lot, but that now like you have to still clean up the body, and everybody's body is a little different in what it needs. So, definitely supporting detox with binders, with sauna, with dry brushing, glutathione, coffee enemas. Those are some of my favorite techniques. Exercise, jumping on a trampoline. But beyond the detox element, you do need to support often other systems that have become damaged. Like they're not just going to like snap back,
Right.
unfortunately. So you mentioned hormones, like, hormone support can be really key because your body's just tired. The hormones, create a lot of energy for us. And if we don't have that, having the energy to detoxify on top of like everything else going on in our lives can be really challenging. So, hormone system, digestive system usually is going to be a mess of infections and leaky gut, and because it just breaks down the digestive tract and lowers immunity. Brain support is really key, and those are often the symptoms that worry people the most, when you're having poor recall and stuff like that, anxiety, depression. So supporting the brain. So, it's good to have probably more than one practitioner on your team, to support you in different ways. Just like you're going to need more than one person probably to figure out, are you moving out of your home? Are you fixing your home? What have you. It's a big project, really, but just take it step by step. And the good news is, you can recover. Like I've seen so many people recover. So but yeah, the bad news is it's often a big long process, is the truth of it.
Yeah, I know people don't like hearing that. I've had people get very upset with me and say, my home was 1.4 million. And I said, unfortunately, mold doesn't know that or care about that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people get offended because they think having mold is an indication that they don't clean their home enough, when in reality, it has, almost nothing to do with that. Um,
Totally. Yeah. I feel like occasionally when I tell my story, I say, hi, I want to say, like, my house looked good and nice and normal. It's not about like decorating or cleaning. And again, most of it is hidden in the walls. So yeah, it doesn't discriminate on the cost of your home.
Yeah, and to touch on what you said about having several practitioners on your team, I mean, it's an energy intensive process for someone who's 100% well. And when you have very low energy and your mitochondria are kind of turned down, the volume's turned down, it's even more energy intensive. And so the last thing you want to do is add an additional stressor, or weight on your body.
Yeah, yeah, it's just the worst timing to have such a big project. So again, I just encourage people, don't add to the stress by, ruminating, overreaching. One thing I did when I was at my sickest is I would do like mindfulness meditation just for like 10 minutes a day. And I actually really feel like that helped me anchor, and just like, you just have to slow down the process of, worrying about the future and should I try this supplement or should I try that person? Is that that's just adding to. I know I'm not saying it's easy to not worry about the future, but you're just adding to what's already existing, which is already a pretty hard situation. So just got to kind of slow it down, listen to your intuition, not be grasping at every straw, because that's going to burn you out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on brain support. So let's say someone has remediated their home, they've worked on detoxifying their body, but they're still constantly in a sympathetic dominant fight or flight state because they're always scanning and
Yeah.
wondering, is there mold here? Is there mold there? What kind of mold? How do I detox it? Do I need to order this supplement? What are your favorite ways to sort of retrain those neural limbic loops?
Yeah, and this is something that's coming up more. We have this mold summit coming up, and a lot of the theme was, or a new theme, I guess I was seeing, was this nervous system support, which I think is fantastic. And some practitioners are really saying, like, let's address this early on, which I don't think you're going to get it down to like perfect, right? None of us are perfectly unstressed, but at least addressing the concept of nurturing the nervous system, I guess you could say, during this time is great. The brain, especially early in mold, it is going to be firing, yeah, kind of like, how can I say, either too much or not enough. Sometimes it'll make you kind of unwilling to take action, but then it will also be overreacted. Like I would really overreact to like a sudden noise or some little problem. So just having an awareness early on that this is kind of your brain is sort of working against you, and you have to settle it down by doing things like mindfulness meditation or going to yoga or using essential oils. Like they can be very calming. um, and you can if learn to use those. What else was I gonna say for this? I mean, I think a lot of the stuff I did wasn't in the neural retraining category. Like I know there's some
Mhm.
programs now, but I had coaches, like just kind of life coaches through this time. I saw a therapist. I spent a lot of time in nature. I exercised. I still invested in like some activities that I enjoy. um, a lot of the things that keep us more grounded are just readily available to us. It's just a matter of like being conscious of them and choosing them. Um, and then for brain support itself, more physically, I like phosphatidylcholine, I like magnesium, I like fish oil. You really have to nourish your gut with fibers, and that kind of translates into short chain fatty acids for the brain. The brain barrier is usually damaged. So it's a kind of a rebuilding process with nutrition, the gut, getting out of that moldy environment. And then, yeah, I think just doing anything that just calms you and grounds you, even if you have to keep returning to it over and over in the day, it is important. It helps you heal, and it
Mhm.
also just makes the process easier.
Do you have an opinion on, say, DNRS or Gupta or Primal Trust, I think it's called?
I just haven't done any of it myself to have a big opinion on any of it. I think I've heard, some good things, some maybe not as good things. Um, so I think whatever appeals to you and whatever works is great. If you want to check out some of these neural retraining programs and they appeal to you, great. Go for it. I think as I look back, and I probably didn't even fully know about these programs. I sort of pieced it together myself, right, the best I could. Um, and I just want people to know, like, that's also an option, right? Just piecing together, like, make your own menu of what
Mhm.
centers you, right? And do those things. And again, sometimes you're doing them a lot because your brain is trying to protect you and worry about everything. And you have to train it to not.
Right. Absolutely. And so you mentioned phosphatidylcholine. So that gets me on the track of the Patricia Kane protocol, which can be done orally or via IV. But there's been some debate over just using binders, over just using phosphatidylcholine. In my opinion and experience, you need both. What do you think?
I like both of them. Yeah, like I haven't done her protocol, although I've heard some good things. Not everyone tolerates everything. I've
Right.
had clients feel a detox reaction from phosphatidylcholine, and I was like, really? Uh, we all react. Like I've never reacted to any binder, any phosphatidylcholine. Like I'm pretty supplement tolerant, which is lucky for me. But not everyone is. I've had people say to me, "Well, every binder irritates me," and I'm like, "Okay, then don't do them. Do try to get more fiber in your diet. Try to make sure you're having bowel movements. There's
Right.
lots of ways to do the job. If a certain thing doesn't work for you, I do like both those things. Both those things were helpful for me personally. But yeah, I'm also a fan of like the customized protocol that works for each person.
You mentioned bile, and I had Dr. Christine Schaffner on the show, and hasn't aired yet, but she's a wealth of knowledge, and we talked about the importance of not only bile but lymph. If you can get those two things moving, then your ability to detoxify goes up significantly. Have you seen
Yeah,
that?
totally true. Yeah, and a lot of the things that helped me the most were lymph movers, I guess, primarily, and then bile movers secondarily. I was interviewed for probably another person, Jody Cohen, and she was like, "Well, what are your favorite ways to detox?" And I was listing them off, and she's like, "These all are all lymph movers." I was like, "Oh, I guess you're right.
Yeah,
They're all lymph movers."
right.
Um, and when I was my very sickest, that helped me the most. Dry brushing I would do like every day. It's so simple. Um, sauna, and I didn't even own a sauna. I would just go to the gym at the time. I was nothing fancy. Um, I eventually got into coffee enemas, which moved bile more. But yeah, it's just, it's almost, I mean, I think you need to be also supporting the body in the other ways, because if you're moving lymph, but you're not giving your liver any nutrition, or you're not pooping or whatever, that may backfire on you to move lymph. But if you are giving your body the other support and you move lymph, I think that's, yeah, like the greatest combination, because it really starts mobilizing stuff and getting it out with the urine and the bowel movement and the sweat. So yeah, that's the money right there, right?
Yeah, and she talks about pathogen reservoirs when the lymph gets stagnant, and how we develop these reservoirs of pathogens and mold and biofilms. And so I think that's incredibly important. Do you have an opinion on vibration plates?
I've only used them like a tiny bit, so I haven't really used them medically. I they were like at some yoga studio I used to go to. I think yeah, again, it could be a good option. I don't think it's a cheap option. So it just sort of depends on your
I
your
just got
budget.
one for $130 on Amazon.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So they've
Yeah.
gone down significantly now. It's not the triplanar 3D ones, but still, it's going to get your lymph moving. For $130, I don't think you can really beat it. Um,
Yeah.
Especially when you combine it with plant stem cells, like Dr. Schaffner's lymph GMO
Mm.
supplement with the plant stem cells. In terms of other supplements, you mentioned liver support. What do you think of calcium D-glucarate in terms of getting mycotoxins moving?
Yeah, so that's mostly used for if the gut, at least in my training, if the gut is imbalanced and toxins are getting released again in the gut, calcium deglutarate will like bind them in that process to prevent it. So if you've run a gut test, or maybe you just haven't run a gut test, but you just seem to be like not detoxifying well, like say you're trying to detox, but then you feel worse a lot, yeah, could potentially use as not exactly a binder, but a binder in a sense, right? That it's keeping things from being re-released in the microbiome of the gut and potentially causing a problem again in the body. So it's not one I've used a ton, but I'll sometimes use it, if I see a gut test that indicates it. But often I'll just say, like, we just need to work on fixing the gut so that you're not recirculating toxins that way.
And one thing I've seen, I'd love to hear your thoughts, but when I know someone has mold, I kind of put gut healing on the back burner for at least a little while, because I know we won't gain significant traction until a large portion or percentage of the mold mycotoxins have been detoxified.
Yeah, I think that's generally true. Like, it's if there's still a burden of mycotoxins, the body's just not going to be in a state where it can start healing and repairing. Um, although just normal, like supportive gut, like I mentioned earlier, eating whole foods and um, just, basic good nutrition, I think is good at any time. But if you're trying to go after infections and stuff, yeah, a person needs to be stable for that to happen. And, I do see people reaching out to us who are like, can I do this protocol or that protocol? And I'm like, well, you're still in your moldy house. So you're
Right.
just gonna have to do it all again later. So why bother?
Right.
Um,
So in the form that I have my guests fill out, I asked, what are some things you're excited about in your current practice and business? And you said antioxidants, the cell core line, muscle testing, skincare, and face yoga. Can you tell us what face yoga is?
yeah, it's just kind of like facial massage or gua sha, like relaxing the muscles of like the face. Like a lot of ways we make wrinkles are by straining muscles. So there's actually a lot you can do to relax the muscles in the face and the head. And it's actually really calming, but it also, helps like your skin circulation and like anti-aging to basically just like learn these different little massage techniques for different areas of the face. It's pretty fun.
Do you use the tools? I have the tools in the other room, but I didn't want to, have my face looking like a lobster, from inflammation the following day.
The tool I would say you're only a little red, like maybe 15-20 minutes usually. So I do have the tools, but I tend to do more just like with like, just hand massage. I just kind of easier and more direct. So just some things I'm learning about, as I think as we age, we want to like stay young looking, but not for like many of us. We don't want to be putting fillers and Botox and stuff in our face. So I'm just kind of exploring natural options. Some are antioxidants, and just good skincare and sunscreen. And yeah, I think you can definitely with consistency improve, anti-wrinkling with face yoga.
Have you tried topical glutathione for the face?
No, I haven't.
So one of my mentors, Dr. Kendall Stewart, Neurobiologics, they have a little jar of glutathione that is specifically for the face. And I don't use it every day, but probably 2 to 3 times a week. And something else I haven't used in a while is topical B5. I had an environmental medicine doctor and an integrative medicine doctor tell me about that. And one of his patients is a dermatologic nurse, and she uses that over the expensive, fancy smancy $400 a month creams and gels.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of options out there. There's an NAD cream I was looking into, but I'm mostly using more simple like vitamin C, vitamin E. They are more affordable. There is a difference using it topically to internally. Like internally, it's great for you for general health and anti-aging, but most of it can't arrive to your skin, so to speak. So for skincare, you more have to like, I'm not anti-sun, but the sun does age us. So you just have to be aware of sun exposure and other environmental exposures, and then like topical antioxidants and just good skincare with like massage and exfoliation. I just it's really interesting, and I think we've made so many advances in our knowledge
Mhm.
that like natural skincare can be really effective nowadays.
Yeah, and it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't have to be incredibly expensive. Sometimes the cheaper options are just as effective, if not more effective, and they don't pose the side effect risk that the synthetic things do. But I was commenting before we started recording on how young you look. I didn't think you were old enough to have a 14-year-old son, so I got to look into topical vitamin C and vitamin E and get up my skincare game. You motivated me, so that's a
Well,
good
I
thing.
have a good camera, but I do have good skin. Yeah, I'm 48, and I'm like,
Wow.
I'm gonna keep having good skin because I'm gonna take care of it, right? So it is a matter of just like learning and maintaining. So yeah, I think it's totally possible nowadays.
And you're in Phoenix, so you have to be particularly mindful of sun exposure. Is
Yeah.
there, in your opinion, a certain amount of time that you can get, say, morning sun before you need to apply topical antioxidants?
I mean, I think you can apply antioxidants anytime, right? That's just great for you. As far as sunscreen, which, always a mineral is best. And there's even like some technical stuff about, I guess, chemical sunscreen is kind of like a waxy layer that doesn't let your skin breathe, among other things. Yeah, this is probably one where I'm like still flirting with, I like to get sun, I like to be tan. But I'm pretty conscious to use sunscreen on my face and my neck area every day. And when I'm out in the sun, I'm conscious of like how long. So for me, I tan pretty well. So, I can have 10, 20 minutes in the sun and it doesn't feel like it's causing any damage. But if I'm out like on a long bike ride or going to the pool somewhere, like I'm definitely more conscious so that I could get so much sun that I burn and I'm more covered up and that kind of a thing. So I think everybody has their own like
Threshold.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great that more and more people are realizing, okay, staying inside all day is not a good idea. You need to get out in nature, get sun, not just for vitamin D, but for serotonin and dopamine and your circadian rhythm. But sometimes people take it a little too far, and they say, oh, well, I'm not going to use anything. And then they're out for an hour in the morning, an hour in the afternoon. And, that obviously has negative impacts on your skin.
Yeah,
So
it does.
one question I'd love to ask guests is what's something that you know today that you wish you would have known, say, 12 to 15 years ago?
Yeah, I think I put in the notes there. I still it's true for me is, I was definitely a person who ran on autopilot to be like an achiever and an overworker. And, that's not the way I operate now. Occasionally, I have to catch myself that I'm getting into that mode. But I guess that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned over time is, we're not just what we achieve or get done in the day. Like, it's our life is really here to be enjoyed every day. And that means more free time and more rest time and, more play time. So, that's definitely a lesson I've learned that
I can
I'm gonna
appreciate
stick
that
with.
one. Yeah, absolutely. And someone put it very well to me a few years ago. They said, Tim, we're human beings, not human doings.
Mm, I like
And,
that.
and so, I get caught up in that trap as well. I think if you're, an entrepreneur, a business owner, you have to have that to a certain degree, but you have to learn how to tame it, so to speak, and not let it be your Achilles heel. Is there
Yeah.
anything you'd like to leave our listeners and viewers with before we finish the interview?
Well, I'll just say if you're curious about mold for your own case, your own family's health, I always say just curiosity is that first stage. Like, don't go too far away in the process that you don't take action. Like, just be curious. We have free resources on my site. I don't know when this episode is coming out, but we do have this mold summit coming up that's totally free. There's a lot of now free learning you can do to just get curious about mold. Like, do my symptoms match up? Like, what is my timeline on my symptoms? And if you have been curious about a couple things in your house or your workplace, just start learning. And if you get more convinced like this might be me, then that's going to motivate you to take the next step of testing. So just be at the step you're at. And, in the end, it's so important to do if you do have mold, like you're just not going to get better otherwise. So just encourage people to come get some free resources from us, and we're happy to help.
Yeah, we'll post all the links, social media links to your website. But thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom with us. You're a wealth of knowledge, and we all appreciate you so much. Keep up the great work.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Have a great day.